Representatives of FingoPay chat to customers about the advantages of signing up for the new payment method. After a short registration process, customers present their fingers to the FingoPay reader.
We shine a near-infrared light through your finger, which illuminates your vein pattern inside your finger. And we all have this unique vein pattern that is completely unique to you. And what we do is we sync a credit card or a debit card to that unique identity so that all you need is your fingers to pay, and it actually uses a card to complete the payment.
A survey of these customers finds no one has yet signed up for the technology, but are open to the idea.
If it's only here, I really wouldn't go for it. But as a concept, it's very cool, and if it's all around, I think it would work.
Contactless payment is quite fast already, so I don't see what's the benefit of using your finger.
I think it's really practical not to have to carry your wallet around and have cash on you.
While this technology is in use in Japan and Poland for some bank customers, this bar in London is unique in offering this way to pay for actual goods, and believe FingoPay will make the drink buying experience more efficient.
On average, it would make the average transaction for a customer probably between 5 and 10 seconds quicker, which to a normal person is a minute amount of time. But if you have 3 customers sped up 10 seconds, I could probably serve a whole extra customer in that section. So it really means you can, every 4 customers, you can serve an extra person using FingoPay to what you would if it was a cash or card transaction.
It's student night here at this busy live music venue, and business is brisk with various methods of payment on offer. But the success of this technology will depend on its appeal to a broad section of society. Those who study developments in biometric data see the use of unique body parts more reliable than fingerprints as a natural development, but are cautious about its appeal to a mass market.
In order to trust in these technologies, people will want to be very, very sure that that this information won't fall into the wrong hands, and that the security around their personal identifying data is really absolutely bomb-proof.
FingoPay insists both the biometric data and bank details are encrypted and secure. As the evening gets underway, those previously skeptical of the new system appear to be getting over their initial caution, perhaps persuaded by the 10% cashback offered on subsequent purchases.
Elon Musk wants to upgrade your brain. The tech billionaire is launching a new venture called Neuralink. According to the Wall Street Journal, the company plans to develop brain implants that connect your brain to a computer with the use of neural lace technology. They want to build on existing medical treatments already used to treat such conditions as Parkinson's disease and epilepsy by surgically implanting electrodes into the brain. This could allow humans to improve and reach higher levels of cognitive functioning. Upon the growing rise of artificial intelligence, the company's goal is to one day offer a potential enhancement powerful enough to put humanity on a more even footing with future super-intelligent computers. Musk has been outspoken about the threat of artificial intelligence, even suggesting AI might one day pose a threat to the human race. In a tweet, Musk called the existential risk too high not to pursue and develop brain interface technology. Musk and other like-minded critics warn that the continued growth of AI cognitive capabilities could lead to machines that can outthink and outmaneuver humans, with whom they might have little in common. Musk believes Neuralink could improve human capabilities in the future and make people more competitive in the job market.
Demanding the EU blocks a deal that would create the world's biggest seeds and pesticides company. Environmental campaigners turn out in Brussels to oppose the merger of Germany's Bayer and America's Monsanto.
We think these corporations already have a toxic grip on our food supply, and if these mergers are allowed to happen, then we think this is going to be a marriage made in hell. This is going to be bad for farmers, it's going to be bad for the consumer, and it's going to be bad for nature, and we think the European Commission should stop these mergers from happening.
A petition letter signed by 200 organisations has been delivered to the EU's competition commissioner. Bayer and Monsanto say the merger would bring billions of euros of investment and create several thousand new jobs. Monsanto has hit the headlines for its genetically modified seeds, condemned by some environmental activists.
Tonight, parents are getting fired up about the proposed new sex ed curriculum at Cupertino Middle Schools. Nightbeat's Betty Yu was at tonight's school board meeting and shows us why some people think their children could be overexposed.
Frustrations piled up as parents packed the Cupertino Union School District Board meeting tonight. Some carried signs that read, "Support age-appropriate sex education," and "Overexposure damages."
Data in it was explicit, it was extremely provocative, it was written with too much of suggestion.
Shri Sarma is talking about the material she previewed that could be taught to 7th graders, including her daughter. In January 2016, the state passed the California Healthy Youth Act, which mandates comprehensive sex ed at least once in 7th or 8th grades and once in high school. While the district has offered sex ed to students for years, the old curriculum is no longer compliant with the new law.
Nowhere does it say that the material needs to be explicit. Neither are we saying that we do not want to comply with the law. All we are trying to say is that let the material not be so much in detail.
It's too graphic and too descriptive, and it's leading kids in certain way.
The proposed curriculum included descriptions of vaginal, oral, and anal sex, along with material on homosexuality.
LGBTQ advocates say the government is intentionally ignoring their needs by not including them in the 2020 census. The Census Bureau released a list of categories it would use to measure the population in the upcoming census. Initially, it proposed adding sexual orientation and gender identity to that list. But just after the list was released, that proposal was removed. The Census Bureau said including it was a mistake. Now advocacy groups say they're being ignored. A representative of the LGBT Research and Communications Project said, quote, "They can't address what they can't see. They're making it so there's no information to understand the needs of the LGBT community."
Polygamists will face harsher punishments if convicted of crimes like domestic abuse or fraud due to a new law signed by Utah Governor Gary Hebert. The measure passed by one vote in the final minutes of Utah's legislative session following several dramatic hearings on the topic and a protest rally in which the family from the TV reality show Sister Wives and several hundred others spoke out against what they said were attempts to infringe on their rights to live in plural marriages. A polygamist man said, "It's absurd that in this day and age that our speech, freedom of religion, and ability to do what we want in our bedroom is being policed by the state of Utah."
North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper reached a deal with lawmakers Wednesday to repeal the state's controversial House Bill 2. Widely known as North Carolina's bathroom bill, the law requires people to use the restroom that matches the gender marker on their birth certificate. It also places restrictions on local governments that want to pass non-discrimination ordinances. Former Governor Pat McCrory signed it into law in March 2016. And though the new compromise would repeal HB 2, it lets the state maintain control of regulation for public restrooms. And local governments would have to wait until December 2020 to pass anti-discrimination laws. Because of that, some anti-discrimination advocates are denouncing the agreement. In a tweet, the president of the Human Rights Campaign said it was simply another version of HB 2 dressed up in a way desperate lawmakers hope will save the state's economy. Cooper acknowledged the deal isn't perfect, but said in a statement it begins to repair North Carolina's reputation. State lawmakers vote on the appeal Thursday.
More than 50 million Americans face the threat of severe weather today. A destructive system brought flooding overnight to parts of Louisiana. Winds approaching 100 miles an hour ripped apart homes in Texas. Tornadoes smashed houses and broke the trees there. The risk of tornadoes continues today. Radar shows the scope of the violent system. Today's severe weather threat stretches from the Gulf Coast into Michigan. David Begnaud is in Oakdale, Louisiana, with the new damage overnight. David, good morning.
Gail, good morning. We've been on the road since 2 a.m. tracking the severe weather, and it has led us here to Oakdale. We just talked to the mayor, who believes it was a tornado that moved through here. Some of the damage is behind me, but I want to give you this look. I'm always amazed when a 6'1" guy like myself can stand in what was the root of the tree and give me the impression of what it looks like now. I mean, it swallows a guy. Can you imagine the winds that it would have taken to lay this bad boy over about 2.5 hours ago? This is a part of the same weather system that we've been tracking since Tuesday that started in Lubbock, Texas, and is marching eastward. Overnight, severe storms swept through the south. More than 9 inches of rain caused flash flooding in southern Louisiana, while high winds brought down trees and damaged buildings.
Look how big it is!
At least one tornado was reported near Hector, Arkansas. That's about 60 miles northwest of Little Rock.
Is it gonna hit us?
In Fort Worth, Texas last night, 2 young boys were electrocuted. by downed power lines in a wooded area. Officials think the lines were brought down by Wednesday's severe weather.
We can't talk about enough the need for safety around downed power lines. We're just starting the storm season, and this is something we'll continue to deal with.
In Houston Wednesday afternoon, drivers braved floodwater. The storm toppled shipping containers at the port of Houston. Earlier in the day, an EF1 tornado caused extensive damage with winds of up to 90 miles per hour. At least 18 tornadoes have been reported in Texas this week. One blew through this Dallas suburb, tearing apart homes and snapping trees. In nearby Rockwall, straight-line winds of up to 95 miles per hour battered this neighborhood.
I'm in shock, and it's horrible inside, horrible.
Pieces of wood, mattresses, and insulation were ripped from the homes. One man was hurt when he was thrown from his bedroom onto his lawn. Jerry Harwood's house was spared, despite some damage.
I think probably the damage that we have on our house is from all the debris and everything that came from the other 3 homes that you're seeing.
The trail of destruction left by Cyclone Dineo, which ripped through Zimbabwe in February, and before it, weeks of heavy rainfall. Apart from collapsing homes and infrastructure, the wet spell has created ready breeding grounds for malaria-bearing mosquitoes and stoked a deadly outbreak.
We have seen an increase above the usual when we compare in the past 5 years.
Since 2000, Zimbabwe had lowered malaria incidence by 79%. But preventive efforts of spraying homes and distributing mosquito nets have been wrecked by the extreme weather. Zimbabwe has joined hands with other countries in the SADC region, also affected by the heavy rains, to manage cross-border spread of the disease.
A lifetime of work and investment washed away in an instant. This egg is all that is left of the chickens and other farm animals that once lived in Oswaldo Paz's yard. The hectare of rice he planted now rots under 3 feet of water. But he's thankful he got to his family before the floodwater reached them.
The water came up to here. It was all I could do to get my children out any way I could.
It was all too much for Oswaldo's wife, Cindy.
This was our living room and my children's bedroom. The flood took away everything. We'll have to live somewhere else.
When the flood came at 1 in the afternoon on Monday, the people in the tiny hamlet of Santa Rosa headed for high ground. The church was more than a sanctuary, says Luis Eduardo Bruno, and it still is.
This church has been like an ark for us, thank God. The whole village was able to gather here, and nature took everything else.
And there are hundreds more places like Santa Rosa. Many have already lost homes, crops and livestock in flash floods in recent weeks. Then came the heaviest rains in a decade. Now they're desperate.
They start before dawn in this bakery in Caracas, preparing the batter for the bread Venezuelans call canilla. It's the least expensive kind of bread, and these bakers are lucky they still have the flour for the batter. For months now, most bakeries have run out of basic ingredients, leaving some with no options but to give up selling bread.
Nowadays, people are eating more bread because it's one of the cheapest foods. People want to buy bread, but sometimes there isn't any. Not to mention, we have a big flour distribution problem.
New regulations for bakeries mean those which buy subsidized flour must sell canilla from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. They must use 90% of their flour for bread and only 10% for pastries. President Maduro has accused bakery owners of hoarding flour to use in more expensive pastries rather than in subsidized bread.
Bakers are not the problem. The problem is that they don't have wheat, and that means there won't be any flour. The government started to distribute flour to bakeries, but that effort is failing, complicating the situation even more.
In the Venezuelan capital, people expect to spend hours in line waiting to buy bread. The lines have grown longer and longer.
We can't enjoy our lunch or our free time because we need to queue for hours to buy bread. It's not fair.
According to the Venezuelan Flour Federation, Venezuela's 8,000 bakeries receive 30,000 tons of flour a month, but that is simply not enough. The Federation says its members need 4 times that amount to meet the demand for bread.
During the last week, government inspectors have arrested several bakers and seized 2 bakeries for charging more than the official price for bread. But hungry Venezuelans are asking whether inspecting bakeries will begin to resolve the issues that are keeping them from putting enough food on their tables.
2 years of war between pro-government forces and Iran-allied Houthi rebels. 2 years of airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition of Gulf states. And nearly 8,000 deaths in Yemen, half of which are civilians. But this balance sheet is just provisional. Millions of people in the Middle East's poorest country are still in danger due to a humanitarian crisis that broke out during the conflict. 7 million people are facing famine. 17 million suffer from food insecurity. And 14 million have no access to drinking water.
And you know as well as I do that the availability of food in the markets and the food prices because of the fuel crisis is also having a big impact on normal people's lives.
The fuel crisis affects not only transportation, but all the country's infrastructure. In this nutritional clinic, generators are often out of order, and machines sit idle. The problem stems from the blockade. Before the conflict began, Yemen imported 90% of its food. But to smoke out the Houthis, the coalition took control of their naval and aerial supply routes.
We want to bring in some important supplies to help the civilian population, but we are increasingly in a difficult situation in order to do so.
The most vulnerable Yemenis are hit the hardest. According to the UN Children's Agency, almost 500,000 children are severely malnourished. The number of children injured and recruited into the conflict has nearly doubled in the past year. Certain NGOs are already calling them a lost generation.
President Trump's Interior Secretary says it will be difficult to build a wall along the Mexican border because of geographic and physical challenges. That wall, though, is only part of the plan to stop illegal imports from our southern neighbor. Another big effort is below ground and involves not just people but illegal drugs. Correspondent Will Carr reports tonight on what to do with all those smuggling tunnels.
Every time authorities find a tunnel burrowed under the border fence, American law enforcement fills the entire U.S. side of the tunnel with concrete.
It's done with every tunnel in order to deter anyone to use it ever again.
But on the other side of the border, Mexican authorities say filling their end is too expensive, so they leave discovered tunnels open underground, creating a security loophole.
Neighbors say it was really an open secret. The cartels were digging a tunnel just a couple blocks away from the border. From the outside, you would never know, but we got rare access to show you what was going on behind these doors.
In the back of an empty Tijuana warehouse, we found a tunnel covered by a steel slab. Underneath, though, it's still hollow, allowing the cartels to get back in and reuse the drug portal, saving time and money.
When the cartels get back into the tunnels, they can actually physically walk all the way up to the U.S. border where it's sealed, and that's when they can start tunneling around.
There's been at least 7 documented incidents where that has actually happened.
It's a major frustration for American authorities who spend millions to discover and then shut tunnels down.
We check it out.
But in Mexico, it's a different story. We were able to walk up to one tunnel entrance after another, finding that security is lax or non-existent. Some left unguarded, others watched over by guards who claim they were being paid by the government.
How many tunnels do you think are in this neighborhood? 6 tunnels in this neighborhood. That's a lot. How concerned are you for your own safety? The cartel's going to try to come back to this tunnel.
It's okay, if the cartel comes back, I'm not going to fight them. It's going to come right in.
It's an open invitation the cartels will continue to exploit.
American authorities tell us the best ways they're combating tunnels on this side of the border are by using technology and getting information both by informants and from the surrounding community.
A Hawaii judge has put an indefinite halt on U.S. President Donald Trump's revised travel ban. Justice Derek Watson's ruling means the executive order restricting travel from 6 mainly Muslim countries must be put on hold while it's contested in court. The Attorney General said the Constitution should protect everyone.
It's not unusual at all in an Establishment Clause case to only have a few number of people who are affected by that. But because their freedom of religion is being threatened, then that's enough to raise a constitutional violation.
Trump claims the ban seeks to prevent terrorists from entering the US. However, the state of Hawaii argues it will be harmful to tourism and says the implied message in the controversial order is like a neon sign flashing Muslim ban, Muslim ban. Chin added, "We cannot fault the president for being politically incorrect, but we do fault him for being constitutionally incorrect."
It's just like other loyalty cards. It takes 10 hole punches to get a free cup of coffee. But flip it over, and here you have a picture of the president, along with other people management doesn't like. The Black Forge coffee shop owner says the intention is to poke fun at a president that doesn't share her views.
We are not threatening the president. We don't want to physically hurt him. We do not condone any sort of hate that's completely against who we are.
The Black Forge is getting support on social media, and the shop's loyal clients say, regardless of opinion, it's their constitutional right to offer these cards.
They're practicing their freedom of expression. I've noticed their coffee shop's been packed, and I know how hard it is for a small business to get noticed.
But not everyone likes the rewards program. People are showing their disagreement on social media, and the coffee shop has gotten threats from all area codes for punching a hole in the head of the president.
Blocked, unknown, 512-602-205. It just goes on, and it's no one from our state.
Now the owner tells us she's had these since 2015, but just recently added President Trump.
Elsewhere around the world, an ex-Central Intelligence Agency director made some extraordinary claims on North Korea, that the regime is a far bigger threat to the U.S. than ever, and it might be time for Washington to consider preemptive strikes.
The United States should be prepared to launch preemptive strikes on Pyongyang, including the use of nuclear weapons, if necessary. That's what former CIA Chief James Woolsey said in an op-ed piece in the Hill newspaper, accusing the U.S. media of underestimating the threats posed by the regime. Woolsey was the director of the CIA during the Clinton administration, warned that if the North uses a warhead-triggered electromagnetic pulse, it could kill 90% of Americans. Woolsey and co-author Peter Pry, who is with the Congressional Electromagnetic Pulse Commission, also listed the possible ways North Korea could attack the U.S., speculating Pyongyang could use a bomb-laden freighter or even conduct a suicide mission.
In a written message to the United Nations, Pope Francis urged all national, international, and civic organizations to work with determination to promote the necessary conditions for a world without nuclear weapons. In his message released Wednesday, Francis said that the international judicial framework is grounded on peace, the pacific solution of disputes, and the development of friendly relations between nations. Wednesday's message was meant to coincide with a meeting in New York of a UN conference to negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons. The Pope stated an ethics and a law based on the threat of mutual destruction and possibly the destruction of all mankind are contradictory to the very spirit of the United Nations.
The Arctic Forum in Russia is underway. It's into its second and last day, and the issues being discussed there are not limited to the Arctic region, it appears. During the session, Vladimir Putin answered some questions on US-Russia relations. Take a listen.
I just want to be very clear about this. You and the Russian government did never try to influence the outcome of the US presidential election, and there will be no evidence found.
Read my lips. No.